Most people believe that sexual magnetism lies in beauty, in the body, in scent, or in well-chosen words, but that is a mistake. True magnetism has nothing to do with appearances, but with psychic energy. Jung once said, "What you repress controls you, what you integrate radiates from you." And it is precisely this subtle radiance that determines attraction. What makes a person irresistible is not what they show, but what they carry within. A body can be beautiful, but if the energy behind it is insecure, it becomes repulsive. Magnetism arises from a silence full of presence, from a gaze that seems to penetrate the invisible layers of the other. It is not about having, but about holding. Holding the desire, holding the urge to please, holding the fear of having to please. Magnetism is the effect of the inner tension one has learned to master, the tension between impulse and self-control, between desire and goal, between touch and waiting. Jung saw the unconscious as a living reservoir. Everything you believe you must hide, everything you repress or ignore, continues to work within you, only beneath the surface. That is why some people radiate something inexplicable but noticeably attractive. They have learned to integrate their shadows, their instincts, their fears, and that gives them a tangible depth. You can feel that there are layers, that there is depth. The body only expresses what the soul contains. That is why it is useless to imitate a style, a way of being, or a pattern of seduction. Without real energy behind it, nothing works, for it is not the gesture that attracts, but the inner state from which it arises. Jung spoke of archetypes, but also of autonomous complexes of personality parts with their own life. A person full of unresolved complexes radiates confusion. An integrated person radiates order. If you want to be magnetic, then learn first. Do not move first. The first rule is simple. Never explain yourself first. Most people feel the urge to justify silence, to fill a gap, to show that everything is fine. But true magnetism comes from those who can remain silent without wavering. When you enter a room and feel compelled to say something in order to be accepted, you have already lost, because your energy field adapts to the expectations of others. The opposite is attractive, the steadfastness of those who do not adapt, who remain themselves even in discomfort. That creates curiosity, and curiosity is the door to desire. Lack of haste creates attention, and where attention lingers, fascination arises. Whoever does not hurry controls the rhythm. The second rule: never seek to conquer, let yourself be noticed. Every attempt to impress betrays neediness, and nothing repels more than obvious neediness. The most attractive person is the one who moves effortlessly, as if they were completely in harmony with themselves, as if they needed nothing. This is not arrogance, but fullness, the state of a person who does not seek validation, but offers experience. It is the archetype of the silent sage, someone who moves lightly through life because they are at peace with themselves. Jung said that the libido, not only as sexual, but as vital energy, must be consciously directed. Whoever invests their energy in observing rather than displaying begins to see what remains hidden to others, and whoever sees deeply touches deeply. The third rule: master your presence before you try to be present. The common mistake is to think that presence depends on the amount of attention one receives, but true presence is not shown by how much you stand out, but by how much you influence the space, even in silence. You can be the center of attention without standing in the spotlight. This kind of presence captivates. Magnetic people make no noise, yet their absence is noticed, because the field they generate is unforgettable. How? By being fully present, neither in the past nor in the future, neither in role nor in comparison, but in clear, alert observation. Such people do not look often, but when they do, they leave a trace. They do not touch much, but when they do, it remains unforgettable. Touch needs no force when it comes from someone with inner density. Here unfolds the subtlest dynamic, the control of expectation. Something becomes desirable not through frequency but through waiting. Magnetism grows in the interval, in strategic delay, in the moment when you could touch, but do not, could praise, but remain silent, could approach, but slightly withdraw. That activates the brain's seeking system. Dopamine is not triggered by the reward, but by the expectation. This is simple neuroscience, and whoever masters expectation masters desire. Jung spoke of the tension of opposites as the true engine of psychic transformation. And what is seduction but a dance of opposites? Approach and retreat, access and distance, action and contemplation. Most want to clarify everything immediately, to secure everything at once, but magnetism consists in opening doors only halfway, in suggesting more than revealing, in awakening images instead of giving explanations. Whoever explains too much destroys the mystery, and where there is no mystery, there is no desire. For desire is nourished by what one does not yet possess, but feels within reach. The mistake is to give everything at once, body, attention, story, emotion, that floods the field and weakens the energy. The secret lies in moderation, in the art of dosing, of leaving traces instead of maps. The unconscious loves symbols, and magnetic people are full of symbols. Ambiguous gestures, enigmatic looks, pauses that say more than words. None of this can be faked. The unconscious of the other immediately senses what is real and what is not. But when these gestures come from someone who truly masters their impulses, the effect is immediate. For the body speaks, and the body of a person who is fully with themselves moves differently. The touch is more conscious, the gaze more intense, the breath has another rhythm, and all this communicates without a single word. Jung said that the collective unconscious responds to universal symbols, and a person who becomes a symbol of security, depth, and freedom transforms for others into a living archetype. And an archetype is never forgotten. It begins to shape dreams, thoughts, and desires. That is magnetism. The fourth rule is master emotional synchronization. Psychological synchronization is not the same as time on the clock. There is the right moment for closeness, the right moment for interruption, the exact instant when tension becomes fruitful. Whoever understands magnetism knows the effect lies not in excess, but in precision. It is like touching a piano key, not just loud or soft, but at the moment when silence longs for sound. This mastery is not learned through imitation, but through attention. You recognize the right moment only when you learn to perceive the invisible field between you and the other. When you sense that the eyes are calling for presence without saying it. When you notice that the body opens even before it moves. Jung called this synchronicity, the mysterious interface between inner and outer world. If you are collected within yourself, you hold. If you are scattered inside, you force. This emotional synchronization is like a dance. The dancer who tries to lead too early stumbles. The one who waits too long loses the rhythm. Magnetism is rhythm, the ability to perceive the emotional cadence of the other without losing your own. Magnetic presence is not invasive, it adapts without giving itself up. It enters the emotional field of the other as if it already belonged there, but withdraws at the climax so as not to become predictable. Thus emotional memory arises, the feeling that something special has happened, even when there is no clear explanation. The brain does not hold on to what is rationally concluded, but to what remains unfinished. The remembered experience is not the most intense, but the most incomplete. The fifth rule, use absence as a language. Most believe that the secret lies in constancy, but the human body does not react the same to constant stimuli. Constancy loses its value. What is interrupted at the right moment remains. Magnetism means creating strategic absence, conscious disappearance, deliberate withdrawal, not as punishment, but as contrast. Whoever is too present loses clarity, but whoever withdraws at the peak becomes a ghost, and ghosts seduce more than real people, because they occupy the imagination, the symbolic space, the world of projections. Jung said that where there is no consciousness, fate manifests. Whoever masters magnetism knows exactly where to stop, so that they continue to live in the other's inner world. This withdrawal is not to create insecurity, but to activate the desire for reunion. Only those who do not fear absence can masterfully use it. Most disappear out of revenge, manipulation, or escape, but magnetism withdraws with elegance, as if giving space, as if trusting that its trace speaks louder than its presence. This absence is not rejection, but an invitation, and a silent invitation is worth more than 1,000 promises. The question is, do you still feel me even when you do not see me? If the answer is yes, the bond arises not in the body, but in the psyche. And bonds born in the psyche are not broken by distance. The sixth rule, make touch a gateway. Most people touch out of reflex, out of impulse, out of need. But magnetic contact does not arise from need, but from intention. It is a gesture full of meaning, slower, more conscious, more symbolic. It happens when the body is already emotionally ready and is therefore received as a deep experience. A simple press on the shoulder, a light brush on the arm, a finger that lingers a few millimeters longer. Small gestures, but of enormous emotional density, because they come from someone who feels, perceives, and acts precisely. Jung said that the body carries psychic content, and therefore a gesture conveys more than just contact, it transmits information. Whoever touches with presence conveys affection, strength, and security, and all this without words. Here, the body becomes a map, not to explore, but to decipher. Magnetic people take no shortcuts. They observe, they touch less, but they touch right, and that activates the archaic areas of the brain. The limbic system responds to touch, smell, temperature, and breath. True seduction lies not in what is visible, but in what is inwardly felt. An unexpected but respectful touch, a pause before contact, a slowed breath that regulates the rhythm of the other. The body is a radar, but it only works for those who are truly present. The distracted notice no change in pupils. The inattentive feel no vibrations of the skin. All this requires extraordinary self-control, because desire pushes toward haste. Yet magnetism arises from the opposite, from the calm of those who, though they desire, do not rush. Jung did not see desire as an enemy, but as energy that must be transformed. When the impulse is not suppressed, but mastered, it transforms into a penetrating gaze, a subtle gesture, an encompassing presence. It then lingers in the air like silent electricity, like a contagious breath, like a magnetic field that seems to attract, even without movement. And within it lies something deeper, the ability to hold back one's own story. Magnetism does not tell everything, it hints, leaves gaps, allows the other to imagine, to complete, to project. This active participation of the other creates bonding. Jung said the unconscious seeks wholeness. When someone becomes a symbol of what we lack, we feel drawn. Fascination arises not because someone is perfect, but because they reflect what the other wishes to complete, not because they are obvious, but because they remain mysterious enough that the unconscious keeps seeking answers. Sexual magnetism does not mean being desirable, but unforgettable. This happens only when the other does not quite understand why they were touched so deeply. The body may forget the gesture, but the unconscious never forgets the emotional impression. What leaves traces is not what is said, but what is felt between the words. What transforms is not constant presence, but that presence which penetrates deeply, even in a short time. Not the quantity of interaction, but the quality of the field created. The seventh rule is, never repeat patterns. Human desire dies in predictability. The unconscious longs for movement, surprise, renewal. That is why relationships do not die from lack of love, but from repetition. The same gesture, the same word, the same moment, the same approach. Magnetism fades when the other already knows what you will say. When every touch resembles the previous one, when every meeting has the same emotional rhythm, the unconscious needs variety. Jung said psychic energy moves in spirals, not straight lines. That means what repeats too often becomes emotional routine. And routine numbs the senses if you want to keep someone emotionally awake. Never send the same energy twice. Today warmth, tomorrow a breeze, and today he dives, tomorrow he floats. Fascination feeds on the unexpected, but not on exaggeration or chaos, rather on the emotional intelligence that balances extremes with grace. A magnetic person knows how to vary without contradicting themselves. They do not change mood, but vibration. Sometimes their presence is fire, sometimes fog. This creates a living, nuanced field that the other wants to decode, but can never fully decode. That is what keeps desire alive, the feeling that there is always something new to discover. A woman or a man who presents themselves the same way, day after day, loses reliability. They become boring, and boredom is the opposite of desire. Magnetism lives at the boundary between the familiar and the mysterious. If everything is new, it creates fear. If everything is the same, the warmth dies. The art lies in creating variations within the same tone. The eighth rule: appeal to primitive instincts. The conscious mind is slow, critical, and logical, but desire arises in older places, in the body, in the senses, in smell, in the skin. True magnetism penetrates the reptilian brain. That is why the small details are so decisive: the speed of your speech, the rhythm of your breathing, the way you enter a room. All this is registered non-verbally. The body of the other absorbs more than it hears. Jung emphasized that the psyche is both personal and collective, and in the collective live the archetypes. If you embody an archetype, the silent hunter, the intuitive goddess, the calm sage, you activate unconscious reactions that come from millennia of evolution. You are not only yourself, you draw upon memories that belong not only to the other, but to all humanity. That is why certain forms of presence touch so deeply. They do not speak to the ego, but to instinct. Use your gaze like an arrow. Do not look to see, but to touch. A gaze that lingers 1 second longer than expected creates tension. One that looks away too quickly signals insecurity. One that fixes too strongly becomes a threat. But one who looks calmly, with presence, with unspoken intentions, suggests possibilities. And where there is possibility, imagination arises. Imagination is the strongest fuel of desire. A touch can be forgotten, a gaze cannot. For a gaze that carries symbolic power penetrates layers the skin can never reach. It activates imagination, which in turn triggers chemistry. Dopamine, noradrenaline, oxytocin, all without physical contact. Magnetism is not contact, it is a field. The ninth rule: create sensory dependence. It is not about addiction, but about a signature. Each person has a combination of gestures, scents, tones, and patterns of approach, but only a few transform them into a language. Whoever masters magnetism becomes unforgettable because they create unrepeatable sensations. It is the way they touch, the sequence of gestures, the way they approach their face, the silence before the kiss, the slowness with which they brush the neck, the mixture of intensity and absence. All this results in a unique experience, and when the body of the other associates deep pleasure with this sequence, they do not crave just any touch, but exactly this one. Not just any kiss, but exactly this one. Not just any company, but that vibration that only one person can create. That makes someone dangerous, not because they are irreplaceable as a person, but as an experience. Someone may have the same scent, the same body, the same style, but they cannot replicate the psychic field that was created. That is what makes absence so painful. One does not miss something visible, but something that was felt in the air. Jung said the unconscious feeds on symbols, and that is exactly what you must become. A symbol of desire, of depth, of extraordinary presence. Be not just a name, be an emotional territory. And wherever you are missing, a sense of emptiness should arise, that nothing else fits, that nothing else suffices. The 10th and final rule: desire intensely, but master with elegance. The most common mistake is to confuse self-control with absence of desire. Yet strong desire is essential. It is desire that warms presence, that gives gesture authenticity, that vibrates in the gaze. The problem is not desire, but haste. Magnetism is the art of desiring deeply without surrendering to desire. It is holding the fire without extinguishing it, making it visible in the eyes, but not in posture. Jung spoke of the process of transformation as alchemy, taking raw matter and refining it. Desire is raw material. Its mastery lies in the ability to elevate it without denying it, to transform it into power, into magnetism, into aura. Whoever masters their own fire warms without burning. They warm the field, they warm the memory, they warm the dreams. And then something happens. A person ceases to be an ordinary man, an ordinary woman, and becomes an emotional reference point, a sensory memory that no new experience can replace. The voice still echoes days later, the touch still pulses on the skin long after the last meeting, because everything that was done with presence. And true presence is rare. Most live fragmented ball in performance in fear, but whoever lives whole becomes medicine, heals wounds without making promises, lets others feel more complete simply by being, not by what they say, but by what they are. Their magnetism transforms into transcendence. It ceases to be mere attraction and becomes elevation, inspiration. Jung would say, at this point, the person has become a symbol, the living embodiment of what the unconscious of the other must touch in order to grow. It is no longer about seduction, but about transformation. True attraction does not lie in conquering bodies, but in elevating souls. It is not about guaranteeing presence, but about leaving a legacy. Whoever consciously masters magnetism no longer needs to manipulate, because they understand that the body is only surface. The true field is the soul, and the soul responds to truth, to depth, to beauty that does not shout, but resonates. Now that you know this, nothing you did before will suffice. For you no longer want to be just attractive, you want to be unforgettable. You do not want to have someone, you want to be someone who is never forgotten. From today on, your touch will be more conscious, your silence more eloquent, your absence heavier, and your presence, when it comes, will change the room. For your energy will be carried, not by fear, but by intention, not by neediness, but by fullness. You will stop playing a role that seeks to please, and will become the source, the space, the symbol. You will not be just another experience. You will be the experience. Remember, everything you have seen here is not just technique. It is life philosophy, applied psychology, refined energy. Jung taught us that the unconscious shapes destiny, and now you have the chance to shape yours consciously. So subscribe, give a like, and dive into this deep journey. For what begins with desire can end in awakening. Your magnetism does not need to be learned, but revealed.